Welcome back to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavlo Shawcross, and today I'm a bit excited because we're going to be getting a piece of equipment that I've been wanting for several years, and many of you guys have been wanting me to have one for several years as well. That piece of equipment would be a Wurlitzer 200. It's a very iconic keyboard. Many famous groups over the years have used them. I've always really loved the sound. When I first got my Korg SV1, it had a Wurlie sound, and at that time I didn't even know what it was, but I fell in love with that sound, and then I learned what it was, and I was like, I need to have the real thing. And I've been wanting one ever since I had that. And today I have the opportunity to go get a really excellent, it appears to be, from the pictures I've seen online, it seems to be an almost like new Wurlitzer 200. So this keyboard is going to be kind of part of a new upcoming series that I'm doing where I'm comparing many of the top brands of modern stage pianos. Many of your top brands, your favorite brands, will be included in this list, and one of the things I wanted to do with this Wurlie 200 is to compare it against the Wurlitzer sounds that these keyboards have, because all of the keyboards that I'm going to be getting and comparing will have a Wurlitzer 200 sound. Many of them will have a few different variants of it. So in this comparison series, I'm going to be probably doing a whole separate video on comparing a real Wurlitzer against all of these digital stage pianos. And we all know that many of them sound pretty dang good, but just how close do they come to the real deal? Well, that's what that video is going to be, and we're going to be finding out which top keyboard comes the closest to imitating a real Wurlie and which one doesn't. I'm also going to be doing a video that many of you guys requested when I've done videos on my Rhodes, to compare the Rhodes to a Wurlie. I have a 1973 73 key Fender Rhodes suitcase, and I'm going to be comparing it against a Wurlie that I'm going to be getting. And because many people have been asking, because they have a kind of a similar sound, and they were also very popular around the same time, and so many people are kind of curious as to which one is better, which one has a different sound. And to be honest with you, one's not necessarily better for the other. One probably would work better for some music than for other, but they aren't necessarily, one isn't necessarily better than the other overall. But I am going to be doing a video comparing the insides of the Rhodes to the insides of the Wurlie and showing you what's different, what's similar, the sounds of them, different pieces that were famous and played on them and stuff like that. So that's going to be a cool video as well, and it's going to be including the instrument that we're going to be getting today if I go get it. So come along with me all the way to Mechanicsville, Virginia. It's a bit of a long drive and it's going to be a long day, but as you can see, the sun's just rising. It's a very fresh day, so let's head out there and check it out. Welcome back once again to Milan Recording Studios. It's actually the next day because it was a really long and crazy day yesterday when I went to go pick this up, and we got back like in the wee hours of the morning, and I wasn't going to be doing a video then. So it's actually the next day, and this is how we brought the Wurlitzer home. We took off the legs and unplugged the pedal and the cable and wrapped it up just like this. So I'm going to be unwrapping it and showing you guys what it looks like. It's always a good idea if you want some equipment and you want it to stay nice to go pick it up in person if that's ever at all possible, because shipping companies don't treat your stuff the way they should, and that's a whole nother video topic that's going to be coming out in the future. But we just used one furniture blanket and these big rubber bands that I'm sure you can buy online. I don't know what the technical name is for them, but I don't think they'd be too expensive. You see moving companies using them all the time. These are a good idea. So one furniture blanket and putting it in the back seat of the car is all it took to bring this guy home, and this is not what it looks like. This is what it looks like. This is the Wurlitzer 200, and as you can see, it basically looks brand new. Now there is one thing missing, which did come with it. I didn't even know that when I bought it, but there is a music stand that will go here. That's what these two screws are here for. They also have a dual function. They also hold on the lid as well. The lid, kind of like on the Fender Rhodes, the lid just pops off and it friction fits on. With this one here, you take off the two screws. You also want to remove these knobs. They pull off, and then you're able to lift the lid up. There's three hinges in the back, and then you can take off the lid and look at the internals, and I will do that in a bit. But this here is what the Wurlitzer 200 looks like. It's really small, and I didn't actually know that it was so small. It's a really tiny instrument. The keys are full size. The keys aren't actually any smaller than a normal piano, but the instrument itself has a pretty small range. It goes from A to C, and it's pretty small, but it also is very heavy as well. For its size, it's quite heavy. It's not difficult to move around. It's very easy, in fact, but it's also a bit chunky and heavy for its size. I'd say that this probably weighs as much as most modern 88-key stage pianos, which is kind of interesting. There's probably some that are lighter, probably some that are heavier, but it probably weighs in around the same as the average 88-key modern stage piano, which is interesting because this is overall a much smaller form factor. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you guys some of the little extras that came with it, like the pedal unit, the music desk, the cable, which is actually right over here off camera. Let me go grab that and just really quickly show that to you. This is the power cable. It's pretty uninteresting other than the fact that it has a proprietary cable connection on the end that plugs in back here, so that is an interesting thing to note, that it's a proprietary cable, and I've heard they're a bit difficult to come by. And then on the end is just a normal 3-prong connector. But I'm also going to be showing you the insides of this instrument as well, and in the future I'm going to be doing a video where I compare this to the Fender Rhodes, which is right there. These are two iconic instruments from about the same time period that many people confuse and think that they are the same, and they often also wonder what the differences are as well. So in that video, I'm going to be talking about the differences, the similarities, and giving you guys some cool song and sounds demos. So if that seems interesting, you might want to think about subscribing. And I'm also going to be doing videos, I think I said this in the intro, where I compare the Wurlitzer to many of the top keyboards of today that have Wurlitzer sounds on them as well. So if that sounds cool, you might want to think about subscribing for that as well. But let me grab the pedal unit, let me grab the legs, let me grab the music desk, let me put this away, we get it all connected and show you guys what it's all about. So taking the top off of a Wurlitzer 200 is literally as easy as 1, 2, 3. You take out the screws, that's your first step, which I've already done. Your second step is to take off these knobs, which I've already loosened up. I'm going to set them over here. And then the third step, you lift up the front like that. Kind of friction fits in once you take out the screws. There's hinges in the back, very much like you find on the back of a Fender Rhodes or think a Vox Continental. And then there's your lid. This is the inside of it. I guess it's plastic. It's got the little metal faceplate on it. There are internal speakers, as you can see, and so those are the little, I guess they're grills for that. I'm going to set this down somewhere and I'll be right back. So this is the inside of a Wurlitzer 200. I have done a video on one of these in the past, but the lighting in that video wasn't excellent, and this one is in very, very good condition. So here we have decent lighting, and we can see what the inside looks like. We have two internal speakers, which is a very nice touch, and I do like that a lot. You can run it to an external amp, which is also fantastic. There's also an auxiliary port on the underside that you can put it through an effects pedal or whatnot. Many people have done that in the past. It's a very famous sound. But you also have internal speakers, which is a nice touch. You got a transformer here, you've got a circuit board here, you've got, these are where the two switches were, that's the little indicator light, and then also some other weird things as well. This here is a little shield that apparently if this gets lost, it will produce a lot of static noise and not be good, so it's good that this has it. It's in very good condition. And behind that is the action, which is a bit kind of like a piano action, except it's a lot different. Let me show you that. So this here is the action of the Wurlitzer, and I kind of want to say that I think this is the coolest view of an action that I've ever seen. It looks really awesome. And the mechanism here is surprisingly simple, but also just really interesting. It's kind of like a simplified version of actually a grand piano, because on a grand piano you have the strings, which are parallel with the floor, and then the hammers strike from below, and that is exactly what's going on here. We don't have strings, we have reeds, but we do have a hammer that is striking from below. Now, the hammers are facing, well, the hinge is on the farther end of the instrument, and the hammer head is closer to you. On a real grand piano, it's the other way around. The hammer hinge is closer to you, and the actual hammer head is farther away from you. But other than that, it's kind of like a simplified version of a grand piano. Grand piano. So basically what happens is when you push the key, this is the very end of the key, so when you push the key down, the end of the key goes up, which moves this wooden mechanism here. When that happens, if you look here on top of the reed as well as in the back, you can see there that the damper is moving up when you do that, as well as propelling the hammer into motion. This piece of wood lifts up, which makes the jack push the hammer up, and then when you do it hard enough, it will strike the reed. And as long as you hold the note down or you have the pedal activated, that little damper up there will be off the reed and allowing it to sustain. So that's what that does. One thing that this has in common with the Rhodes is the design of this action is a little bit different, but also kind of similar. The Rhodes also has these kind of backwards facing hammers with the hinge farther away from you and the hammer closer to you. But one thing that both the Wurlitzer and the Rhodes have in common is that when you don't have the instrument powered off, you can still actually hear it. For example, if I play some higher notes here, there's also lots of action noise because, like I said, it's powered off, but hopefully you can hear some sounds there. Hear that? You can actually hear the instrument when it's powered off, and the Rhodes is the same way. And another thing they have in common is that the low bass notes, when the instrument is powered off, they sound like death. Because all you're hearing is the high partials, and they sound absolutely weird. But of course, when you have the instrument powered on, they sound absolutely wonderful. Now, speaking of those reeds, I'm going to take off this top shield and show you guys the reeds and as well as the pickup mechanism, and you'll also be able to get a better view of the dampers and a different view of the action, because that's kind of interesting too. So I've taken off the top shield. There's 6 screws on the front of here that you just simply loosen up, and then the shield will slide up and lift off. It's really pretty simple. And so now you can get a little bit of a better view of the reeds, which are here, as well as the dampers. When you push down a note, the damper goes up. I think you can see that before, but that's just a bit of a different view of it. But now you can also kind of see the reed better as well as the hammer. You can see how absolutely tiny that is. It looks really, really small. It's much smaller than an actual piano hammer. And the reed here is also, you can see that a bit better, and you can see how it vibrates when the hammer hits it. The reeds go all the way up to the very top of the instrument. At the very top, they're like really, really small. They're like, I don't know, a sixth of the size of this one. And they're really tiny and high pitch, and this here is the lowest bass note at that A. And you can also see the pickups here, which are really, really unique. I wish I could almost like lift the dampers off to show you, but right here is this thing, I want to call it a comb. It's kind of what it reminds me of. And there's a little slot that the reed doesn't, it fits into, it doesn't touch the pickup, of course, but it just kind of sits in there with very little clearance, and that is the pickup, and that picks up the sound of the reed. And that's why it's able to pick up all the bass frequencies, but when you play it normally without the instrument powered off, you don't hear those, and it sounds really weird. But when you have the instrument powered on, of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the sound. It sounds really bassy and really awesome. Let me put the shield back on. Let me show you the pedal and the music desk, and then I'll actually play the instrument, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay. This is a super, super close-up of the hammer, reed, and damper mechanism. That's what it does. You can also see the pickup comb there, as I like to call it. That's what it does, and that's kind of cool. So this is the treble side of the Wurlitzer, and you can see just how teeny those little tiny reeds are. Now there's a few interesting things to note here. First of all, you can see the pickup as a bit better as well. You can see just how very little clearance there actually is between the reed and the pickup itself. You can also notice that there's no dampers on the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last 5 notes of the keyboard. And something that really strikes me as kind of funny is that on a piano, you don't have any dampers there at all. But on this, you might be able to see there's a damper over here on this tine. It's the full-length piece of wood, and then there's a little piece of felt under there that mutes the tine. Over here, you can just see the little corner of this little block of wood that's like the end of the damper mechanism, and then they just cut it off because they don't need any dampers there. And when you push them, they move. For some reason, it kind of reminds me of like the little useless legs that like boa constrictors have that are like left over from when they used to have legs millions of years ago, and they're just there but they don't do anything. It's like these. They're like left over from when it used to need dampers there, but it doesn't anymore, so they're still there but they don't do anything. I don't know, that's a goofy analogy, but that's all I can think of to describe that. It's really weird. I don't know why those blocks of wood are still there, but maybe it's for weight. It must help to pull the key back up into place or something, but it's just kind of funny. This is one of the speakers. It's the one on the left. This is the bass end of the instrument. It is original, and also, as you can see, and you probably saw earlier when I took off the top, it is a very weird shape. It's oval shaped, and you don't really see that too often anymore today. It's about 8 inches across on the outside dimensions and 4 vertically, so it's a very strange shape, and it's very unique. And that's the left-hand speaker. The one on the right-hand side is exactly the same. This here is the circuit board. It is a preamp, and this is the original one. This was the one, like I said, this is a Wurlitzer 200, so this is the original board with it, and so as a result, it has a very gritty sound. Now, there are modern versions of these that are meant to have a more clean sound that apparently is very good for recording, and perhaps someday I'll mess around with that. I've heard that they're pretty easy to install, and you can just swap them back and forth. That's what I've heard, and so perhaps someday I'll mess around with that and maybe do a video of it comparing the original versus a new version. But for now, I'm going to roll with the original, because the gritty sound is what was used in many of the old records, and I personally think it sounds pretty cool. I was testing it out at his place, and I thought it sounded awesome, so I'll test it out in a little bit here in this video, and hopefully you guys enjoy it as well, but I like the sound so far of the original preamp. In that last clip there where I was playing a song which is actually going to be released in a little bit in the future, it's a cover of a piece, and if you want, you can try to guess what it is, but I'll bet you won't be able to because you probably haven't heard of it before. In that clip, you probably saw a little can sitting on top of the instrument, and that would be this. This is QD contact cleaner, and I was using it because both of these potentiometers, as well as the jack underneath that outputs to an amp, both of those were causing an insane crackling noise that basically made it impossible to record the instrument. It was really bad. So what I did was I took it apart like you saw in the video, and I took this and I basically sprayed it inside of this knob. I took off the knob and I sprayed it inside kind of the potentiometer. And if you're going to do this at home, a couple of Tips. First of all, you're going to want to use the little red nozzle to really get it inside and spray as close to the inside as possible. You don't want to spray it over it like spray paint. You want to get it inside. Another thing is, if you're going to be using this, definitely unplug the instrument and make sure it's all powered off and completely good, because this is liquid and electronics don't really get along very well together. So those are the two big tips for you. Make sure to use the red nozzle and make sure the instrument is powered off. Make sure, yeah. So those are the two tips. That's what I did there, and it seems to be working very good. As you can hear, it's not making any crazy noises. Now, one thing about the Wurlitzer 200 is that it does have a kind of a grittier, more raspy sound with a bit of a higher noise floor than later models, or with a more modern preamp. This one, there's actually a date on it from 1972, so it's pretty old. A more modern one, like the ones made by Wurlitzer, I believe is the name, they have a much more cleaner sound that wouldn't have as high of a noise floor and would be, like I said, a bit cleaner. But for now, I'm just going to roll with the old one and just see how I like it. I do like the sound of it, and so far it seems to be recording very well. I haven't run into any issues with noise being a problem. So for now, I'm going to roll with it, but I'm not putting a modern preamp out of the question. Perhaps someday in the future I might try it out. I've heard that they're easy to upgrade and install and swap back and forth. So if that is true, perhaps someday in the future I'll do a video comparing the original preamp to a more modern one. But for now, let me just play around a little bit and show you guys a little bit more of what the Wurlitzer 200 sounds like. The Wurlitzer has such a neat, unique sound. Really, when I sit down in it, the only thing I really want to play is blues, so that's why I kind of did some random blues improv stuff there. But it has a really unique sound, and one of the few instruments that actually sounds like it would be the Fender Rhodes, especially in the bass. To me, the treble range on this is radically different, at least when it's by itself, than a Fender Rhodes. There's a lot less sustain on the Wurlitzer. It has just a more gritty sound than the Rhodes. The Rhodes are very pure and bell-like. This is a bit less so. But the bass end of it is kind of growly like a Fender Rhodes is. And it's a really, really fantastic sound. One of my favorite things about the Wurlitzer, though, is the sound of this vibrato. It's one of the few instruments that I really love with a massive amount of vibrato. The Fender Rhodes has that awesome vibrato in it, but if you put a little bit too much of it, at least for me, it kind of bothers me when it's auto-panning back and forth, and it can get a little bit crazy. But for me, personally, I think that the Wurlitzer sounds amazing with vibrato. And if you turn it off, it still sounds cool, but it's a little bit more boring. Turn it on. Oh yeah. It sounds really, really awesome, and I absolutely love it. I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and I'm finally getting around to it now, that I would talk about and show you guys the music desk as well as the pedal unit. And I'm going to start off with the pedal unit because I'm going to put a picture of it up on screen. And so far, I'm really loving the design of the pedal unit. Even though the weight of it is very light and it's not a whole lot heavier than most modern pedal units on keyboards, it's a really great design, and I'm not having any problems with it at all slipping on the floor. And the reason for that is because it's got that huge pad that's connected to the actual pedal and goes under your feet. I'm sure we're all familiar with that annoying problem when you're using a keyboard and the pedal just starts sliding away from you. I really am annoyed by that. But this doesn't do that because that pad, your foot's on top of it, anchoring it to the floor and keeping the actual pedal from moving away. If the pedal had to move away, your whole foot would move with it, and that's probably not going to be happening. I've only been using this pedal for a few minutes, but I really, really love the design of it. I don't know why no one today, at least, you know, mainstream keyboard manufacturers, are using that design. I guess somebody probably
copyright, and, you know, has the patents for it and doesn't want anyone else to use it, but it's a really great design. People should use it more if possible. It's really awesome. It's also a bit unique because most pedals, when you push the pedal down, it raises a rod that pulls the dampers away from the tines or strings or what have you. But on this, it actually pulls a little, it's like a, you know, little, like a little wire for like a bicycle brake. It's that exact same kind of a thing. So you push down the pedal and it actually pulls the end of that cable in, which raises the dampers off of the reeds. And it's a really unique design. It has a good feel to it. It's very, very nice as well. The music desk is unique. It's very interesting. I actually haven't tested it out with music, so I don't 100% know how it's going to work, but it should work pretty well. But it has a very unusual design. Sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. They do make modern reproductions of these, I believe, so if you have a Wurlie or you're looking at one that doesn't have one of these, well, you can buy more modern versions of them that look the same. It's a really unique design. It kind of reminds me of like an oven rack. It's very odd, very simple, kind of minimalistic, but it's all metal, and it's pretty well made, and I do like it a lot. So that has been a review of the Wurlitzer 200. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me going and getting it and seeing all the internal workings of it. It's a really cool instrument. Many people, like I've said, have wanted me to own one of these, to do reviews of these, to do covers of songs that used these. If you have any cool cover suggestions for songs I should play on it, whether they're like new modern songs that you think would sound cool with a Wurlie, or if they're original, you know, vintage songs, classic songs that used a Wurlie in them, let me know if you have any cool song suggestions, and let me know just in general what you thought of this video and how you like the Wurlie. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a really, really cool keyboard. It's going to be one of my new favorite things to mess around with in the studio. It has a really cool sound, really awesome, and I love it. Hopefully you guys loved it too. If you did, you might want to think about hitting the like button if you enjoyed the video, and if you want, you might want to go check out my channel if you're new. I've got lots of cool videos of keyboards, pianos, organs, all kinds of other neat keyboard instruments, and as I've said before in this video, I'm going to be doing a really neat comparison video where I compare the real Wurlie against many modern stage pianos and their Wurlitzer equivalents. Many of your favorite name brands that are very, very famous, many of the top brands will be featured in that video series. And I'm also going to be doing videos where I compare the Wurlie to the Rhodes and things like that, because that's a very common topic, as people often talk about, is the Wurlie better? Is the Rhodes better? I'm going to be talking about that and covering it and showing you guys all the neat differences between the appearance and the sound and the physical build of them in a video. So if that sounds cool, you might want to think about subscribing. If you do, make sure to hit the notification bell to be informed of all of my future uploads. And if you do all that, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.